Hi again. Thank you very much for joining us. It's Diederik Gelderman here once again from the AVBA, one of the committee members in charge of workshops and events. And today, once again, we're lucky enough to have Rosie Overfield from Crampton Consulting on board, talking to us about some of the things that she's going to discuss at the On the Move series this year. Rosie, thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Thanks.
Rosie, the second thing I'd like to talk about, and last week we talked about vision and a lack of a unifying vision. The other thing you mentioned to me in the past was that trust is an important factor in team building and in team, and that, I guess, is fairly obvious. But can you go into that in a little bit more depth for us today and explain the nuances of the trust scenario?
Yeah, certainly. Trust is really characterised as one of those things that define high-performing teams. And if any of you have read any work by Patrick Lencioni, he talks a lot about the 5 dysfunctions of teams, and trust or lack of trust it comes up time and time again. Now, when we talk about trust, we're not really talking about, I trust you to help me in surgery, or I trust you to hold this animal. We're talking about that fundamental human-to-human connection in our practices that really mean, when I'm emotionally and mentally and, sometimes physically in a situation that I'm not feeling so great about, as a team we really trust each other to turn inwardly to be able to communicate fully and competently with each other, but also to support people out of that space into finding solutions and really moving the team forward. And it ties in quite nicely with the ability to be more resilient as well, which I'll talk about in another session.
So where does trust start? Where or when does it fail? And the third part is, how do you build it, or how do you rebuild it?
That's a really good question, because ultimately if the trust isn't there, you cannot layer any further skills or development onto teams. It's just too difficult. And I use the expression about having spears up in practice. And, human beings fundamentally, we're designed biologically to be aware of what is dangerous and unsafe around us. And so naturally, if we go into clinic and we see that someone is having an off day, rather than thinking, perhaps that person didn't get a good night's sleep, perhaps the car broke down, perhaps the kids, were misbehaving this morning, we immediately and often we put the spears up and we kind of go, oh, that person's not good with me today. Well, I'm going to give them a wide berth. And then suddenly that person goes, oh, there's something wrong with Rosie today. And we have 2 people with spears up, and we all kind of circle each other from a distance. And what that means is, because we're hyper-aroused in that situation, we often look for the danger. And it actually, destroys a lot of relationships and good communication that we can have with people. Now, trust is one of those things that it's not easy to foster and maintain, and it actually requires daily maintenance. And when we bring people into our practice family, we have this beautiful crucial period, which is that probation or induction period, which is actually that golden period where we can have people understand why we're all together. We can give people activities and we can give people space to be able to connect with each other personally, but we can also teach people to understand that it's okay to not be okay, and having a system to help that person go, you know what, today I'm not okay, can I talk to you about it? This is what's happening. And we keep it all very adult so it doesn't become tribal and it doesn't become, sometimes we hear the analogy of, people in a kindergarten, so to speak. But trust is really that fundamental connection that people have. And it actually, in creating it in teams, can be done very simply. And a classic example is in a recent workshop, I took a bunch of people who didn't know each other very well. In fact, they didn't know each other at all. And I simply said to them, I want you to break up into pairs and I want you to interview each other. And I just want you to ask each other 3 questions. First question is, I want you to ask them where they're from. The second question I want you to ask them is how many people are in their family? And the third question I want you to ask them is, what is something that I am not going to know about you just by looking at you? And each of the pairs interviewed each other, and then they stood up and introduced each other to the group. And it was a 10-minute exercise with 30 people. And I said to them, I said, how comfortable are you now with each other? And they'd all got up and moved around and sat down and found people that they had similar connections with, and they said, we're feeling really good. Like, this person over here is actually a twin like I am, and this person actually comes from the same state that I do. I never knew. And in that simple activity that was done with a group of people who didn't know each other, very quickly we had built a lot of trust and a lot of sameness, which is really important in helping people work closely together.
Wow, two things come out of that for me, thank you. One, you said trust needs to be built every day, and the second thing is how simple and yet how profound that exercise. So I guess for anyone that's watching that may be thinking about coming to On the Move, they're the sorts of exercises, and I guess there's others as well, that you'll be sharing on the day that'll help them build trust in a team or heal broken trust and those sorts of things if they have those sort of issues in their team?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, my philosophy is keeping it as simple as possible, because we're incredibly busy already with the work that we do. And what you just said was perfect. You know, it needs to be maintained every day. We need to be aware of what's happening around us, but actually to create trust and to maintain trust, there's many simple activities and exercises that I hope to share with everybody at the workshop to have them immediately go back and do that.
Rosie, I think we'll call it quits at that, because I think you made a great point, which I'd just like to reiterate. There's lots of simple daily things that everyone that is coming will learn, which will allow them to foster and build trust in their team. So a really good reason for the viewer to come along and spend a day with you at the event. So Rosie Overfield, thank you very much for joining me once again, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thank you.